All right.
Hello. Good afternoon. I was going to say good morning. It's November morning.
I mean, it's morning somewhere.
It's morning somewhere.
It's morning.
Welcome to the Voiceover Q&A panel. We're going to do some quick intros for ourselves. I'll start with myself. My name is Samantha A. Morrison. I'm a casting and voice director, mainly for video games. I've worked on franchises such as Black Desert Online, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, World War Z the Game, part of the Nancy Drew series, and a bunch of others, like Shadowverse as well as another really fun one I get to do. And I don't know if I said Vindictus, but I love Vindictus, a great game as well. And I'm co-hosted today by this lovely lady right here.
Hello, I am Lindsay Sheppard, a voice actor and director and agent and coach, and I've been doing this for about 20-something years now. What do you know me from? Shadowverse. I'm about 450 characters in that one.
Sprinkle.
S-Snake in One Piece, Akari in More Than a Married Couple, Kusari in 100 Girlfriends, all of the rom-coms you've ever heard of, what else? Goddess of Victory, Nike, and 200 other characters, literally. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about voiceover and answering your questions. I'm really not good at intros, so here we go.
All right.
Great, me neither. So one thing we were going to start off with is a lot of the common questions we get in voiceover is, how do I become a voice actor? And it's the age-old answer of there's no one way to become a voice actor. Usually we recommend people, there's a great site compiled by the lovely Dee Bradley Baker called iwanttobeavoiceactor.com, and it starts you off from absolutely no experience in what are the paths that I can take to develop my skill as an actor? How do I start networking in voiceover specifically? What kind of content in voiceover do I want to do? Do I want to do commercial? Do I want to do animation, prelay, or dubbing? Do I want to do video games? And that's a great resource to have when you're kind of starting from nothing. And then the other thing we usually suggest is to take a bunch of classes, developing yourself as an actor, not just in voiceover, but just generally as well. A lot of acting is we call pulling from an authentic place. That doesn't mean that you have a one-to-one experience with the character that you are voicing. You are probably not a young 20s male protagonist that's been thrust into another world somewhere, but you might have relevant experience in feelings of isolation, or what am I doing with my life, and that kind of existential crisis that then you can develop into a character that someone else can have an adventure with. So I think a lot of getting started in it is just developing that, as well as immersing yourself in the content that you want to be a part of, be it in video games or animation, making sure you're keeping up to date with what are the trends, what am I looking at, where are these performances kind of landing in the grand scheme of exaggerated versus grounded, and then immersing yourself in the community as well, being around other voice actors as well as production staff, support staff, developers, and kind of just seeing all these different aspects of an industry which you are contributing towards and being a part of. So that's my kind of spiel about how to become a voice actor. Do the thing. Do you have anything to add?
And if you're looking for a local community, what's happening? I created a community for voice actors in Texas called Lone Star VO, and we have about 500, 600 voice actors currently in the group. We do meetups and events, lots of classes, one-on-one coaching, all sorts of stuff. It's just lonestarvo.com, and you should check it out.
They're awesome. Great. So that's our cute little intro.
Yeah, who wants to ask some questions?
Ask away. Anyway. Yes.
You voice acted in a couple of different things. The only thing I've seen is Spy X Family, is there any recommendations of anything else that you've voice acted in, like that would be your favorite, a good recommendation?
Are you open to rom-coms?
Yes.
Okay, currently right now, 100 Girlfriends. The 100 Girlfriends who really, 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 really love you is in season 2 right now. It is hysterical. It's a harem anime, but it's all of the tropes. And there's so much fourth wall breaking. It's really, really fun. Any of the shows that I've been in, I recommend, because those are the ones that I have watched mostly. Yeah.
Yes.
Any tips on voice direction?
I was gonna say for voice direction, do you mean in terms of an actor or, for an actor, a lot of it is just, what is your director saying versus what are they meaning? What are they trying to get out of you? Where are they trying to get you emotionally in a place? Because the director won't give the same direction to get to the same place for each person. They're gonna tailor it to you and what they're experiencing from you in that moment. So just making sure that you're open and receptive and not getting caught up in your head about it. I think sometimes we think of acting as like, you develop such a strong characterization of who you want to present as in that moment. But in voice acting, you have to be amicable to someone completely directing you the other way, and you can't have like an ego about it and being like, well, this is how I saw them and this is how I imagined that they would be, because at the end of the day, it's not about how you feel about the character, it's how the director sees the grand scope of the project in your contributions towards it. So I think as long as you're open and receptive and actually listening to what they're saying, then your performance will naturally follow that.
And they are the ones that sign the checks.
Yes, there's also that. They sign your checks at the end of the day. So you kind of, to coin a phrase, you're monkey, right? You're dancing monkey. You're there, you're hired, it's a job. You have expectations of you.
And I also recommend taking improv classes because it'll help you think on your feet and be open to those quick changes in the booth. There's some great improv classes in Austin and all over Texas. That's definitely one of the things I recommend the most.
It'll also help develop your cold reading skills as well, because you're going into a lot of voiceover without any sort of context. Some productions will be kind and give you a script ahead of time. Some will expect you to just do everything in the booth without any sort of forethought to it. So developing your skill for cold reading as well. I like to recommend people just read Shakespeare to themselves. That's a great way to kind of dig into the dialogue of not only what am I saying, but what do I mean? And I think there's a great voice actress by the name of Reba Burr who does cute little TikTok skits of voice acting in Shakespeare. And she puts it in a lot of odd characterizations, like she has a Midwestern mom that she does in Shakespeare voice acting. And it's great because every single nuance of what she's saying in that characterization, you understand as an audience who has no context of where she's coming from if you're not like super well versed in Shakespeare. So again, I think that's what like true acting and voice acting is being able to communicate to your audience what it is that the client or developer or content is trying to say.
Any other questions?
Yes.
What character do you honestly feel you can have the most fun with? Like, you can unleash your inner gremlin or...
I have played this character. Her name is Frito in Hello Kitty Super Style. She's basically the opposite of Hello Kitty. She's loud, she's a diva, she's super full of herself. She really wants to be friends with everybody, but would die if anybody knew she wanted to be friends with them. She's so fun. I really recommend checking it out because she's just ridiculous. And she's super loud too, which is like the opposite of me. Any other questions? Don't be shy.
What was the first anime that you remember watching that made you a fan of the genre?
Oh, God.
That's a good one.
Mine is dot hack sign back in the day at 4 a.m. because 12-year-old me couldn't sleep. But I just remember, I would tell this story, I have a very vivid memory of, I was really obsessed with that show. Music is my first love. So I became obsessed with the soundtrack by Yuki Kajiura, who was like my musical inspiration for a lot of my young and adult life. And so I remember taking the Dot Hack soundtrack to my social studies class. It was the first week of school, and they had us make a box of little things that represent yourself. And I put this soundtrack in there, and just little 12-year-old me at the front of the class trying to like play it on a boombox, trying to convince people of like, it's really cool, I promise. Like, but it was a really hard sell back then. But I just didn't care. I've always loved animation and music, and I've always found a very beautiful marriage in them. And in voice acting especially, I compare it a lot to spoken word poetry and music theater a lot. It kind of lives in that genre. And I feel like Dot Hack is really great about that because you have these very, the dialogue does a lot of heavy lifting. There's a lot implied in the dialogue because it's very minimal. And the music does so much in coloring the scene. And to me, it's just this beautiful marriage of art and music. And so Dot Hack Sign is mine.
Samurai Pizza Cats. It was the only show that came through on my little like camping TV that we had because we didn't even have like basic cable. So I would watch it like in black and white on this fuzzy little tiny screen, literally this big. That was my first exposure to anime. The first time I got like really obsessed, it was Pokemon. Like that was my teenage life. Like my whole heart, I'm Team Rocket for life. I just loved it so much, and then when I finally got cast in Pokemon, I was like, okay, I can die happy now because everything's full circle and my life is complete. But then I went and got in another Pokemon franchise, and I was like, oh, I can just keep on joining the Pokemon universe over and over again, so I'm going to keep on doing that. That's my goal.
So you're telling me if I'm in charge of Pokemon to bring you back? Yes.
Yes,
Okay, I can
please.
do that. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes.
There are some parts of voice acting you don't like. Some parts.
Go ahead.
Specifically for localization and dubbing, the unrealistic expectations of turnaround are a big one for me. There's kind of this prevalent idea of like, oh, we hate on the dubs because they're lesser than of an art form than the sub, but when you meet the people behind it and you see what they're working with, which is very limited resources, very limited funds, and a crazy turnaround, especially with the prevalence of simuldub, you really feel for them. And so I don't know if you've ever had this happen. I'm sure you have, where you put your whole heart and soul into this production, and in my case, I think really hard about who do I want this cast to be. I have to make do. I have to utilize them for a certain amount of time, so I need them to cover this, and making sure they're not talking to each other, and if they are, that the vocals are different, and all these things. And you do it all, and you go through it, and you power through it, and you're just like, wow, I did it. Like, I'm so happy about this. No one's ever gonna watch this thing, and I just spent the last 2 weeks like stressing out over it, like for nothing. And so it's hard, you do it because you love it, right? You don't do it because, oh, I'm gonna make all this money and I'm gonna get all this fame or everything from it. You do it because you love it. And so like even the negative parts, at least in my opinion, like inform the greater whole. Like I do it because I find the satisfaction in it to know that I did that and I worked really hard at that.
Yes, that has been my experience a lot. There's many, many things that just I spent like every waking moment of the day working on, and nobody's heard of it ever. But I've heard of it. I know what I did for these characters in this tiny little show that nobody will ever see. But it's worth it, the sacrifices. There's no vacation in voiceover, is what a lot of us like to say. There's no vacation. I went 10 years without actually taking time off, and I was working like 16-hour days in voiceover during the pandemic.
Yeah. We didn't stop during
Mm-mm.
the pandemic.
No, but I love it, and I forced my children into it. So I'm going to force all of you into it too.
I'm right behind you. Once one can make full sentences like
Yeah.
these, we're right behind you. Yeah,
Any other questions?
that was a great question. Yes.
Do you think that whenever you're dubbing, is it like better? Do you like prefer to have the people interpret the character's actual voice differently, or like more the same? Because I've seen some where like the dub and the sub, both in Japanese and English, are very, very similar voice for the same character, and some where they're different. And I like them both, but it's like a different case-by-case basis. Like, once you've watched one where the voice is different, you can't watch the other because it's like, oh, that's weird, you know?
Yeah.
Well, for me personally, if I get an audition for a character and there is a reference, I'll go and try to match the tone as much as possible and the soul of the character. I try to figure out who this character is and then like filter it through me. A lot of times though, you might not have a reference, especially with a simuldub. If it's not out yet, you just take your best guess. And sometimes it'll stick and it might not sound like the original.
Yeah.
But again, you're matching the soul of the character when you're recording it.
Yeah.
It's not so much the voice. If the voice matches, then that's even better.
I was going to say from the production side too, we're not always given references when we're sending out the auditions. And so sometimes when the client is the one choosing the voices at the end of the day, they never tell us what the original voice sounds like. And so sometimes they'll go a completely different route and we never knew. And I always like to say localization is not a translation. Localization is taking into account the market that you're trying to appeal to. So the American market is not going to respond the same way to an original like Japanese voice, for example, even in certain intonations and certain like vocal tics and things like that. We have to take into account what the American market is going to respond best to, because we're not just appealing to anime fans, we're appealing to the breadth and the width, the whole scope of potential audience. But I know for me, like from casting side, unless I'm explicitly told to match the original voice, I don't even think about it. I go purely off of image and, again, what Lindsay said, the soul of the character and what resonates with me as far as like how I interpret this character. So there's a lot of personability that's put into the localization side on that aspect too. But then there are also some times where the client's like, no, we need it to sound like exactly the same, and so then that's what you have to take into consideration.
Favorite dubs?
Oh God, so many. There's the classic Cowboy Bebop. That cast just gets better with time, I feel like. That's a big one for me. And then because I used to play it so much, the Soul Calibur 2 dub, I remember going through the vocal menu of that and listening to all the voices individually in the original language as well as English. And so that was a really interesting cast for me, because that was the first time I got to like pick it apart and kind of go, oh, I see, this line actually means this, or they were going with this intention, or whatever have you. And then I ran and worked with Wendy many, many years later, who directed that game. So everything kind of comes full circle, I think is also why. But yeah, the Cowboy Bebop dub to me is still like the most iconic, amazing dub there is.
Pokemon.
Bias!
I mean, I didn't even know when I was watching this as a teenager. I didn't know that it was dubbed. I just was watching it on TV. I was like, this is great. Exactly, the jelly donuts. Core memory. But recently, one of the shows that I was in, I'm in Love with the Villainess. We put our heart and souls into that, and Hannah is just brilliant as Ray, and it's just so good. So watch it, watch it. And more Pokemon.
Well, I was gonna say, if it's dubs that I did,
It's dubs that I did. I love everything I did with Black Desert Online. We had a couple recent expansions where we were in what is basically Korea. And so I had to cast like 200 Asian American actors to cover like thousands and thousands of roles. And I got to have the amazing Sungwon Cho as the lead for that. Who ended up developing a Korean cowboy as the main character. And I just feel like there's no one else who could have gotten away with that. And he's so talented and such an incredible person. So if I'm talking about things that I've worked on, that's like one of my favorites because how often do I get to say I got to cast a Korean cowboy? So,
yes.
Do you get to travel when you're doing your job? And if you do, what's your favorite place that you've been to?
So I haven't gotten to travel as a casting director specifically, but I used to do experiential marketing where I was at trade shows showcasing mainly tech and gaming. I did a lot of demonstrations with Nintendo. I got to work Nintendo Switch Tour. I tell a story about how I was at Genesis 4 and got to hold a prototype Switch, which was really cool. So I used to get to travel around for that. I've done a lot of Nintendo events separately from my casting job. But this year I started my own casting business. So I really hope to go around to more conventions and get to travel more there and meet more fans, granting knowledge and accessibility where normally we don't get to have it. Outside of your LA, New York, Chicago markets, getting into more of like your Kentuckys, your Iowas, your Wyomings, these places that normally don't have access to this. I'd love to start going there more and meeting more of those fans.
Yeah, conventions are mostly when I'm traveling. There's a couple studios that I do have to go be in person, but like 99% of what I record is from my home studio. So I lock myself in a padded room and talk to myself and sometimes other people, and that's my life.
Our job is to be like, that was great.
Yeah.
Now do it better.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, now this one's a little cheeky. Have you ever used your voice acting to get like fast food revenge? Like if they mess up your order, like Gabriel Iglesias, go back into the drive-thru and
No, but now I have some ideas.
I was gonna be like, not me. Usually it's, my whole thing is like people come to work with me and then they're like, oh, my husband really loves Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, or like some of the fighting games that I've done. But it's like I'm usually working with like their partner or somebody else or their brother or something. And then they're always like, oh, by the way, I was supposed to tell you my uncle really loves this work and such and such. So that's always really fun where I'm just like, oh, yay, thank you.
I do watch on TikTok those like answering the prank callers. Yeah, I was like, ooh, that's tempting, but no, I'm too shy. Like when I'm in the booth, I feel like I'm a different person. Like normally I'm just super shy, like I don't want to bother anybody, but in the booth I'm like, Kitty, give me a smoothie now. Like, any other questions?
We are here for you.
if you could be casted in any reboot or remaster of an anime, what would it be?
Samurai Pizza Cats.
I'll watch it.
Oh God. Well, I was gonna say, I was gonna say Cowboy Bebop, but that cast is so good. I would just love to be a part of the Dot Hack series in some way, shape, or form.
The original Sword Art Online.
Yeah, well, I actually did work on the original Sword Art Online. I was a lovely little production assistant on the very first season of Sword Art Online, and you can hear me as additional voices in the players that get caught in the game in episode 1. The director of that, Alex Von David, is one of the most amazing anime directors I've ever heard. He's also, he did Blue Exorcist back in the day. He's done Madoka Magica, really great iconic stuff. So it was really cool to get to work with him. But yeah, Sword Art, anything with Yuki Kaijura, I got to meet her back in the 2010s, and that was like life-made kind of moment. So yeah, anything that she's involved in too, to be like, look at it, listen to it, it's gorgeous.
When I rewatched Erased, I realized this sounds a lot like Sword Art Online. I looked it up. It's you.
I do that. My husband is the big anime watcher in our family, and he's a sub guy, which to my detriment. But he'll listen or he'll watch a show, and I'm just like, wait, I know those bells. I know that European melody. Wait a minute.
Yes.
Any type of character you want to voice?
I think I've done them all. I don't know, like, I always will say I want to do this type of character, and then I'll do that type of character. Like, I feel like I've hit a really good range. I think the only thing left is Disney Princess.
I would love to do like a really heavy dialogue, like RPG kind of game. I usually do mostly like MMOs or fighter games. So I'd love to do something super dialogue heavy, like a Final Fantasy type of game, and just really dig into the meat and breadth of the characters. I already have like a short list of people in my head who I know do that really heavy, like almost theatrical Shakespearean acting, and that's kind of the realm I want to lean into. Or on the opposite end of that, a game that's completely in a made-up language, and really getting to showcase the actors and the life that they bring to these characters, even if they were speaking any other language.
So you want to do a Sims game?
Yes, basically.
I did one of those. What was it called? I played this drunk princess. And there's no words, she just makes sounds, and like it's just all efforts through the whole thing. It's something like fairy tale. Oh, look on my resume, something for drunk princess. But it was one of those types of games, there's no words, and I think that's so fun because you have to tell a story without using those words, and it's a really fun challenge.
Well, it's so collaborative too, going back to like when you have a great director that you like working with too, and getting to collaborate. It's not just you that's developing this, it's a group effort, and so I like seeing like everyone's individual contributing efforts in the final product is really cool.
Any other questions?
Yes.
So do most voice actors work individually in their own homes, or do they generally go into a studio? I'm kind of getting at, is this a lonely kind of work?
Yes. Yes. I think, group recordings are still a thing, but it's recording an ensemble cast altogether is a technical nightmare, and also like depending on like the type of talent you have like involved in it. Do you have voice actors who are day players, or do you have your quote A-list celebrities that you have to coordinate all these schedules with and fees for, and how much work does it take to actually get to the point of the group recording? It's just so much easier to work on an individual basis for everybody. I would say, I'm trying to not get on a soapbox right now. I am very pro remote recording. I think having accessibility to all different types of actors is extremely important to me. Unfortunately, our industry trend, despite everything that we were able to do during the pandemic, has been edging more towards local in-studio, like very isolated markets, with a couple of caveats and exceptions for actors who have, quote, paid their dues or shown reliability already to this extent as a remote talent. But even then, there are certain companies that don't care about all that and force people back in studio to justify rent prices. So I just don't think that being in studio is a grander service towards the industry as a whole by creating self-imposed limits. I think that opening it back up to, vetted, respectable remote setups, which can be done on an individual basis, is really important. But to answer your question, yes, it is very lonely. It's very isolating. We joke that we're always yelling at ourselves in padded booths. On the opposite end of that, when we all get together, we get very loud, and we get very excited to all see each other, because we usually haven't seen each other in sometimes weeks, months, years on end. So when there's conventions and things like that, or when we run into each other in those in-studio environments, it's like no time has passed, and you're just excited to like see your coworker you hadn't seen who's on the opposite side of the building, you know?
Yeah, like you'll be recording a whole entire season of a show and you never run into who your co-star is. Like,
I don't even know sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, I know your voice, I know who I'm like acting against, but you don't actually get to speak to them. Although, I have been lucky enough to do some really fun ensemble records remotely, where we have like 10 actors all on the line, and we get to play off of each other. And it's so much fun getting to respond in real time with the other actors. It's so great. There's a feature film that I did called SEAL Team, and we got to do like a 9-hour remote recording with all of us in there, including the voice of Squidward. It was super cool. I was like, yay! But it's just so fun. Like you actually feel like I'm interacting with people.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you made me think about during pandemic we did a remote loop group ADR recording, and it is really incredible. Like everyone's in these different places. We had some people that were in the same room with each other and in the same booth, and some that were in the studio, and then some that were in their home studio. And it was just really cool to hear it all come together. Because you're nervous, you're just like, what if there's delay? What if like people are missing the mark on like what we're doing? What if it doesn't seem collaborative? And just I don't know why we ever worry about that. It's so amazing to get.
So fun.
It's really cool when we all get to like record and see each other and work like in a collaborative environment like that. I just think that too often people think that has to be in person in studio when you can do it a hybrid kind of style, and it's just as incredible, if not more so, in my humble opinion. So, yes.
Okay, so you said that you would want to get like a more dialogue-heavy voice role for like a video game. If you were given one of these two choices, and you're given a main character, so you're going to be very heavy on the dialogue, which one? The next Final Fantasy or the next Persona game?
That's so hard. That one's hard.
Because I'm not an actor, I'm a director and I cast, so I'm just like, which one would be more fun characterizations for me to play with? And I feel like the Persona series has such strong characterizations and who they develop, and you spend so much time with them that I like seeing their arcs, because I've definitely had characters in Persona where I'm like, I despise you, okay, now I get you. In Final Fantasy, even if they have a character arc, they kind of mainly stay the same fundamentally. And so if I don't like a character at the beginning, I'm usually just apathetic by them by the end. So I would have to say, for me personally, for my own self-satisfaction, probably Persona.
I can't choose.
You heard Mike's.
I know.
I had to justify it to myself.
I know. I have done a Final Fantasy type character, but it was Brave Exvius, so not like the main series. So I'm just gonna have to say Persona then, because I haven't been in that one yet.
Yes.
What about visual novels?
I've done visual novels before.
Yep.
Yeah, we've done.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, those are really fun.
What I like about those is usually you just have the image and the text box, and so the actor, again, just really gets to shine in those kinds of environments where they get to build the scene a lot of the time. We talk about adding color and musicality to a scene and giving it full-bodiedness and weight. And so I find in visual novels, the voice acting part of that does a lot of like work in that, and I love seeing the actor really sell the scene. You know, in other games you have, you know, your cutscenes and your full motion videos and things like that. But something about visual novels, Shadowverse is very much like that in my example. It's not a visual novel per se, but it operates fundamentally the same, where you have the still image and the text box below it. And again, those are very like theatrical, you know, performances where you go a little bit bigger because you're having to sell this very grandiose situation. So I really like that aspect of visual novels.
Yeah, and you're painting a picture with your voice, and it's just so fun. I started off as an artist, and that's how I fell into voiceover. So like that character design, but from an internal perspective, like I love that, and using that improv to add those extra layers. That's what I love to do. Any other questions?
I got one.
Don't be shy.
So, if you had the opportunity to do work on an animated Marvel or DC film, who would you like to voice?
I don't like my answer.
So my answer is gonna be DC, and only specifically to work on Batman, which sounds like a very cop-out answer, but it's also because my biggest casting inspiration was Andrea Romano, who cast the original Batman the Animated Series. So to be able to just share a space with her, with all that she's inspired me to do, would be incredible. I also have like top picks on who I would want for like Batman and Barbara Gordon and all these people. And I'm a big fan of Talia al Ghul, so I would like to be able to cast an incarnation of her. I was gonna say I'm just gonna hire Zara Fazal, but like she's already Talia, so I have to come up with somebody else now because they took her from me.
I just want to be an Agatha all along.
Yeah.
Please.
Such a good one.
Any other questions? No being shy. Anything voiceover?
It's okay. We're here for you.
A food question?
Food question.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, boneless or bone-in with
Oh.
I am vegetarian.
They have veggie wings something?
Yeah, cauliflower.
So again, you're making me not like my answer because I'm a boneless person through to convenience. But if you're talking to me about which tastes better, it has to be bone-in. It's so much messier, and it's like if I just need something that I can eat really fast, just give me the boneless. Yes.
Speaking of wings, what kind of flavors are you?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I like classic like teriyaki or buffalo. I'm boring.
Buffalo.
Yeah, buffalo.
Buffalo's good. I like the tang of buffalo.
I like the blue cheese that goes with it.
I'm not a sauce person.
Yes.
What's your favorite Pokemon?
Oh God. No. No.
I'm so basic. It's Eevee.
Yeah, I know. You can't take mine.
It's Eevee because of the possibilities.
Yes, I'm an Evolution stan. I love Evolutions. If I had to pick one, they're all different reasons. My personal favorite's probably Suicune, but that's because Pokemon Crystal was my favorite Pokemon game growing up. But I also like Beware because I love that he hugs his enemies to death. That's really fun. But yeah, Eevee probably. Fane Mata calls me Eevee.
Probably Squirtle was always my favorite, like when I first started watching. So definitely Squirtle, and Pika is just so fun to do. Like all of the originals. I just love all the originals. I used to have all of the originals memorized, and then they just kept on adding more, and I gave up.
I can get like halfway through Generation 3, like sometimes. But I remember the first episodes when it came out, but I'm a Gen 2 person. Like I really love, because I love that Gen 2 was this idea of like, oh, we can do more. So I liked that it was honoring a lot of what came before, but also like started that transition into like what we know as modern Pokemon. So, yeah.
Which favorite evolution though?
God, again.
So whenever I'm playing, I just have to evolve into Vaporeon, just because I know how to fight in that style. But like, I don't know, Sylveon's so cute. I just need like the fluffier the better. But yeah, like I go really hard in my games, and I'm like, I'm going to destroy it with my Vaporeon.
So I have two. One, for a personal reason, was Flareon, because one of my favorite cards I had growing up, it was a Japanese holographic first edition jungle Flareon in Japanese, and it was like my pride and joy for the longest time. I don't know where it is, I'm sad, I need it back in my life. But I think otherwise probably Umbreon, shocker.
Can't tell at all. Yes.
What's your favorite Hackleby?
Favorite what?
Hackleby?
Oh.
I like Sign. Sign is probably my favorite. It's just because I really loved, I love Tsukasa's story. Again, just, they started the whole trend of like getting trapped in the internet. But I also love Subaru as a character from there as well. Again, for me it was, as a kid and in my teens especially with young internet, it was the door of opportunity. It was being able to do things that I wouldn't normally be able to do. I very much grew up I'm from a small town, I'm never gonna like do anything with my life, I'm just gonna struggle through life and not feel fulfilled creatively. And I was able to break that partly due to internet and tech and gaming, and I'm very grateful for that. So Subaru's story about finding freedom in her game character in that incarnation really spoke to me at a very young age.
I'm not familiar.
I was like, you don't know, never mind. I was gonna pass it off to you, and I was like, never mind.
Any other questions? Anything voiceover at all?
It's like we're here.
Well, we were talking about Pokemon a minute ago.
I know it's called voiceover though. Voiceover.
Have y'all, I guess it's kind of like an explanation for I asked the question. Have y'all read the Pokemon Adventure manga?
I haven't.
So, I'm always for the idea that they do an anime adaptation of the adventure manga, because Team Rocket is presented more of a cartel in the manga.
Wait, that sounds really fun.
where half the gym leaders are members of Team Rocket, and as you get further to like Gold and Silver, you find out Giovanni is dying of a disease. So Mewtwo was created to cure that disease. That's why they were cloning Mew.
That sounds awesome. You were literally making me think about like, I like what they did with Giovanni in the Let's Go games a lot. They really like fleshed him out a lot. So I think it would be interesting, because I think that's a plot that they could probably integrate if they wanted to. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
So if they ever make an anime, I would adaptation of the manga, probably like 20 years from now, I guess, because we just lost Ash. We're gonna see how he might come back. Who knows? But if there's any character from the first generation, if they were doing an anime adaptation that you would like to voice, who would it be?
James.
He's not
Jiro.
James and Jesse don't exist in the manga.
I would make it happen.
You can't have it without them.
No, he's the love of my life.
Love it.
Yes.
It's just like all the gym leaders for me, being able to kind of thinking about the gym leaders as an ensemble rather than as individuals, I think would be really fun and challenging. I love the ensemble casts that get better with time, and ensemble casts that really like work well with each other. I think the new Sailor Moon is a great example of that. You have really strong, incredible actors in that, and they work really well as an ensemble all together. And so I think about the same thing. Not necessarily that they have or share scenes together, but that they're all cohesive, because it's a thought that's put into the game itself that I would like to translate more into the anime adaptation. If that makes sense.
And I would like to be a Pokemon too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Please.
sure. I'm sure.
Well, y'all talk about, so you are an experienced voice actress. You've been at it for a while. I looked up your profile, because do you think it's a little bit, I'm not gonna say easy, but it's more like, I don't know the right word. It's more reachable to become voice talent with everything that's been like, you not just have anime, you got independent video games, studios like Team 4-Star, and all these different projects that are looking for people to kind of break out into. Do you think now it's become like less challenging? Because I was looking at, I talked to Chris years ago, and he said at that point when they were first getting Dragon Ball, they didn't even get it from Japan. They got it from Mexico, and it was so difficult to get anything and get talent to even voice. They used like the same person for like 10 characters.
Yeah, so when I started 20 years ago, it was a completely different industry. It was a lot more expensive to get into. You'd have to spend at least 10, 20 grand on equipment to have an actual like room, booth, microphone, everything that sounded good. It was so expensive. Nobody really heard of it. Like if you said you're a voice actor, people are like, wait, what? Like on the radio? Like what do you do? It wasn't a thing that people really knew about. And now everybody knows what voice acting is. And there's a lot more people in voice acting. So it's a lot cheaper to get into voice acting. The equipment is much less expensive. You can have a broadcast quality sound in your closet with a bunch of clothes all around you, a $200, $300 microphone, and you can be recording stuff right away that can be in independent animation, independent video games. So it's a lot less expensive to get in, but it's a lot more competitive. There's a lot more people in the industry. So,
I'm gonna have to agree with you.
Oh.
So, but this is good. Like it's good because we come from two different, I think, realms of voiceover to start. And I started a little bit later than you. I've been around. My internship was in 2013. So I was kind of in the middle of like anime kind of finding its footing in popular culture. So I get when people would say like, oh, it's the same 3 people for every single show or whatever. So I do agree that like there is more accessibility, there's a more competitive market because I don't want to call it an oversaturation, but you know, anybody can do it theoretically with enough resources, time, and money. But I think if you're planning on making it like your career and like thinking about it for the longevity, that $200 mic, you know, closet recording space is only going to get you so far. You know, if you really are serious about pursuing it as a career, you are going to have to invest those tens of thousands of dollars into equipment. And then the other thing to consider now is the ever-changing market of as much as we have the accessibility to do things remote, people are going to insist that you are in a centralized market of some sort or able to easily get there. So yes, more people have the ability to do it. I don't necessarily think that makes it easier to get into. The other thing to watch out for with accessibility is undercutting payments, because sometimes people will claim things as indie and get away with very low rates when it's really not. And it's just a way that they justify to themselves to underpay talent when they go and make an insane profit off of your voice. You get a 1 session payment normally, you know, there's, I think, 0.1% chance you might get a residual in one thing, but it's not gonna be in video games or animation. It's gonna be in commercials usually. So it's keeping that in mind that there was a big article about the Jujutsu Kaisen movie cast, and they got paid $500 for their session for a movie that grossed multi-millions of dollars. That's the reality of the anime industry still. It's still somewhat undervalued by certain people, and I think with increasing the available like actors in that too, unless we all stand together in solidarity, it's just going to continue to get worse before it gets better.
That was very depressing. I'm sorry.
And if you're curious on what you should be charging as a new voice actor, don't be giving away your voice the client is making money off of your voice. Like, you might say, oh, this is gonna look great on my resume, I will offer to do it for free. Don't do it. You will get paid. It's not just the time it takes for you to say the words, it's your experience, your talent, the equipment, everything you've invested in your career. So be charging industry standard rates. There's 2 places that you can go to look at the rates. GVAA Rate Guide has some great non-union rates listed on there. My great friend Christina Malizia helped put this together. She asked a whole bunch of people, myself, my husband. Did she ask you also?
No, but I know Christina well.
Yeah, a whole bunch of people to find out like a range of what people are charging. And there's a whole list, every category, like corporate, automotive, like everything that you could think of, there's a rate listed on there. And charging within those rates will help keep those rates livable. Let us keep on doing this for a living. And if you're looking for the indie guide for like video games, I believe it's Casting Call Club.
Yes.
Kira Buckland put together a list on what to charge for indie video games, because those are gonna be a little bit less. They're smaller budgets, but there's still a standard that should apply to that.
And I was going to say, Kira comes from online voiceover world too. So she's very well aware of how that industry has grown over the last couple of years and keeps up to date with all of that as well. And Christina's very well versed in a lot of different aspects of voiceover, specifically in like audiobook and commercial on top of animation and video game. Another great resource for voice actors is NAVA Voices, the National Association of Voice Actors, run by the incredible Tim Friedlander, who is pushing for Gen AI protections for voiceover people in Congress right now. So we appreciate all the work he does. It represents both union and non-union actors and helps them develop things like medical care, as well as industry resources, and again, kind of what you should be charging for what different types of work. So if all sales talk to the voice actors, talk to the community, ask them what they think it should be, and then I always say as an actor, it's your choice at the end of the day what you can morally stand behind. I am the type that's like, take the work, everyone has bills to pay, we have to keep the lights on somehow, but it's a matter of doing the work that you want to do, not the work that you feel like you have to do. Because once it starts becoming dreadful, then you lose the spark for it, I think. So it's a matter of weighing like how you feel about it too. Yeah. We love voiceover. It's a lot, it's a business at the end of the day, I think is the main part of it. I like to use the comparison of you wouldn't walk into a hair salon and say, hey, I really want to do hair. I've never been to school, I have no training, and I've never cut or colored anybody's hair in my entire life. I want a job, please. You wouldn't do that. So you wouldn't do the same with voiceover. You wouldn't go, I have no experience, give me a job. You would go, here's my resume, here's been my training, here's where I've been going, here's where I have been, being self-motivated to learn more about my industry. If you would like, I would love to be of service to you in your production. So treating it like a business, which it is fun, we love what we do, but the voice acting part of it is such a small portion at the end of the day that you have to consider everything that surrounds it too.
And you're gonna be spending, as a full-time voice actor, you're lucky if you are spending 10% of your day actually on the microphone. A lot of it is going and researching, it's all spreadsheets and invoices and like accounting. It's a whole lot of boring stuff to be able to get to go play for that 10% of the time.
You're running a business, your business, you are your business.
Is that a question?
Since you're in the voice industry, do you critique other professional voices or non-professional voices? Like if you receive a junk call or listen to the radio and there's a commercial on, does it sometimes make you go, ugh, I can't believe it?
Sometimes. Mine is mostly in the post-production editing. If I hear a really bad ADR line that's poorly mixed, I'm just like, why? You have like
you're Disney, you're Paramount, you're whoever, you have these resources to mix this well. Why was this so lazily done? So it's not in like the actor specifically, it's usually in the post-production. I can tell when something was done really last minute. I don't know if you can hear ADRs in movies too.
I am constantly judging. I can't but it started when I went to college to become an animator and just analyzing films, I can't just sit and enjoy a film or a cartoon. I'm always thinking okay, they did this, they did that, okay, that's
Why did they do
what
it like
happened to
that?
So, and my whole family is in the voice acting industry, so yeah, we're terrible people to go to the movies with.
No, I do. I was gonna say, I do that where, especially in dubs, I can tell when they're doing things linearly versus jumping around episodically. So I can tell, especially with the lead character, I'm like, okay, this is day one, your first minute on the mic, and they used your very first take. Why did they do that? But then as they get comfortable and get into the characterizations, the part that I like that resonates with me more so is them finding that comfort in the character and seeing them develop alongside with the character. And so, yes, it can quote take me out of whatever I'm watching, but I just love seeing that left on mic or on film essentially in our industry, which is really cool. So I think that's our time actually. We can take one more if someone's got one more. Or not?
I got one.
Go for it.
So, I've asked John, I've asked Johnny, I want to get your opinion. As a podcaster, whenever I give advice about starting a podcast, I tell people, take a public speaking class because it'll help out in the long run. Is that something or similar that you would recommend for people that want to start, practicing?
Yeah. I was gonna say before we go into, you can take classes with active working professionals, which is the key there. Making sure that they're actively involved in the industry. In our case, we were just talking about this to not just focus on one instructor or just voiceover classes either. Extending yourself as an actor as a whole, learning about nuances. I love theatrical, I love music theater, I love anything that develops your voice. Voice lessons. I also found one of the best ways that helped inform the voice acting performance was actually ASL. It's this idea of if you have a quote hindrance, how do you still communicate this emotion? How do you still communicate what it is you're trying to say? Voice acting is very similar. You only have your voice to work with, but that's not to say you can't involve physicality into it. It's not to say that your voice doesn't have nuance. You just have to be able to translate what it is you're trying to communicate into that instrument. And I find ASL is very similar in that regard. That's my personal opinion, but.
Yeah, usually I recommend, again, taking voiceover classes. That's great. I teach voiceover classes. I usually say don't start one-on-one coaching until you take group classes. Learn all of the basics first. You're going to get more for your money that way because classes can add up. Private classes really, really add up. So taking group classes first, learning with other people, learning all of the basics. Once you get through all of that, you'll have very specific things that you want to work on. I know I struggle with this particular part of my performance. This is what I want to work on one-on-one with a coach. So learning everything that you can. Taking, I think there's ACC, I think does an adult acting class also. Any chance that you can get to act, to read out loud is going to help you. And improv. I cannot say enough about improv. It completely changed my career. Taking my first improv intensive, you will use it regardless of what genre you're in. Yes, you'll use it in character work, but you'll use it in commercial work to make those strong choices. Corporate work, you have to pretend you are an expert at whatever you are talking about in whatever e-learning for hours on end, and being able to act through that is going to sell it a whole lot more.
I'll say one last piece of advice for voice acting classes is if you don't have the funds to be a participant in those classes, a lot of them offer observer spots, which can be a very valuable tool as well. Typically, to participate in these classes, it can be a couple $100s. The observer spots are usually like $20 to $40. And no, you don't get to have that on-mic feedback with whoever you're training with, but I like to use it as an exercise where I'm listening to the person's performance and I'm making my own notes and critique about it, and then I like to hear what the expert has to say and see kind of where we align, or maybe they solve something differently than I do, or they attack it a little bit differently than I do, and kind of just looking and comparing notes. And then also sometimes they just get these nuggets of wisdom that they'll spout out during a critique that normally maybe wouldn't be applicable to you, but it's good that you know it, so then you have it in your back pocket for later on. I've done that. I've sat in other casting directors' classes, like Sarah Sherman, who does animation, is fantastic, and she has so many great little nuggets of wisdom, and same with Andrea Toyas, who does the Blizzard casting. Just listening to some of the casting directors in their classes is really cool to hear. And you get to experience a bunch of different performances as well to help, again, retain all that information to then help inform your choices at the end of the day. I think that's our time, but thank you guys so much for everything. And Lindsay is here in the alley all weekend. So stop by and see her.
I'm in the dealer's hall, I think it's called, like in the back corner. But I have information on Lone Star VO in our classes and free workouts, which definitely are awesome and really fun to join in on. And I'm gonna be signing prints and all sorts of stuff. Come by and say hi.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.